Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Ranking Member Boyle. This budget process is about setting our priorities as a nation and determining the resources we need to meet our goals, ensure every American has a fair chance to succeed. As members of the committee, we have a duty to deliver a budget resolution that makes good on that promise. Yet, we're here today to consider a budget resolution 10 days before the end of the fiscal year, a budget we should have worked on 6 months ago. We're barreling toward a government shutdown because Republicans reneged on the bipartisan budget deal they voted in June. We're trying to deliver on campaign, and they're trying to deliver on campaign promises to cut everything but defense. In this extreme Republican budget, in my home state of Maryland, 600 kids will be cut from Head Start. 4,400 teachers will be kicked out of the classroom due to the budget cuts. Is this really our vision of America? They say they want to decrease the national debt. Who doesn't? But in reality, Republicans are engaged in an insidious cycle of starving our government of resources, complaining government doesn't work, and then cutting some more. That doesn't sound like a winning formula. Well, as the biggest job creator on this committee, here's the truth about investment. Debt is an instrument in your business. It's an instrument in your idea, your people. It's about thinking long term. When I started my business, I took on debt. I believed in my product, my team, and those investments helped us expand into new markets, hire more people to support their families. The investment decisions we make in this room can be the difference between stagnation and innovation. That's why I'm introducing an amendment that would restore critical funding to scientific research and exploration. It prevents the dangerous cuts envisioned by the extreme MAGA House Republicans, particularly reductions in scientific research. Who wants to cut science? Good Lord. And technological advancement. Instead of stripping resources from agencies such as NASA and NSF, we need to drive our country forward and compete in the 21st century. Now more than ever, we're making stunning advances in space exploration, such as NASA's Lunar Surface Electromagnetics Experiment Night Instrument, set to explore the far side of the moon. These scientific advancements take vision and a confidence in our best and brightest, a vision our country that this resolution sorely lacks. I oppose this budget resolution and urge my colleagues to adopt this amendment to support American research and development. I hope my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are willing to deliver actual solutions if they want to balance the budget rather than this charade. I yield the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman from Maryland and now open it up for any member who'd like to claim time in opposition to the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I request to be recognized.
I yield 5 minutes to my friend, or 4 minutes rather, Mr. Good from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the remarks by Mr. Trone, but despite his impressive business experience and success, if he ran his business and spent money and borrowed money the way the federal government does, he would have been out of business and wouldn't have had the success that he's had. This federal government spends 130% of its GDP, or gross domestic product. That would be like our debt is 130% of our GDP. That would be like having debt that was 130% of your sales, not your income, but your sales. We'll spend some over $20,000 a citizen this year, over $20,000 a citizen at nearly $7 trillion. Only 15% of that, about $3,000, are on what should be the priority of the federal government. Could you imagine a business that only 15% of what it spent its money on had anything to do with the real priority of the business was? So we'll spend $3,000 trying to keep the nation safe and secure, which is number one responsibility of the federal government. I suppose my friends on the other side do not agree with that, and they believe that it's the responsibility of the government to be the nanny state, to provide for and to take care of the citizens, if you will. We believe the number one responsibility of the federal government is to provide for the safety and security, and including securing and protecting our constitutionally protected rights that we believe are God-given rights. So we'll spend $20,000 per citizen this year, borrowing $6,000 of that. Borrowing $6,000 of that for every citizen, not for every taxpayer or even every household, but every citizen. We have, again, $33 trillion in national debt, which represents right at $100,000 per 330 million Americans. And what do we have to show for that? When you spend and invest in your business, you have something to show for that. What does the average citizen have to show for his or her share of $100,000 of that debt? Now, we were talking specifically about research and development investment, and the federal government, I think we all agree, and this budget reflects, does place a value on that, an appropriate value on that. However, it should be limited to that which only the federal government can do, or only that which the federal government should do, for which there is not the sufficient private incentive to do so. This budget understands the importance of ensuring the United States remains the world's leader in science and technology. This is not an easy task, as we face enormous budget challenges, as I've just mentioned, and increased global competition, specifically from China. I would like my friends on the other side to recognize the threat from China. They are not a competitive partner, as this administration seems to think. They are an existential adversary. But this budget recognizes that challenge and recognizes that communist leadership in China understands the advantages gained by being the global leader in science and innovation, is determined to surpass the United States in critical technologies. Mr. Chairman, I would like to request unanimous consent to submit the fiscal year 2024 views and estimates letter from the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also just use as an example of private versus public, or private enterprise versus the taxpayer and the federal government. In 2022, there were a total of 78 successful orbital launches in the U.S., outpacing every other spacefaring nation on Earth. Companies like Rocket Lab, Blue Origin, ULA, and SpaceX are leaps and bounds ahead of government-funded and operated programs in nations like Russia and the aforementioned China. This commercial innovation is what this budget encourages, facilitates, and fosters. And Mr. Chairman, I would also request unanimous consent to submit a data repository from the Center for Strategic and International Studies titled Space Environment Total Launches by Country into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm thankful this budget recognizes the premium of the private sector and private investment and private enterprise, and encourages and facilitates that accordingly. And I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Virginia, and now yield to Mr. Trone from Maryland for the last word, and we yield 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Good, for that. We certainly support the safety and security of our country. We're all in. And we certainly support private efforts in space exploration. They've been outstanding, and we hope they continue. But if my colleagues knew what they were doing, we should have done this in March. You pretend to be fiscally responsible. We head to a shutdown. In 2013, the shutdown cost the government $2 billion. We'll never get that back. It's in our debt. $2 billion. You put it there. If you want to be fiscally responsible, get your caucus to pass a continuing resolution. As a former businessman, I know when you believe in something, you invest in it. If we don't invest in research and development, we lose to China every day. We lose. You made my point for me. We lose to China. Let's not lose to China. They're willing to invest in their people, but you don't want to. Here in Congress, we're in the business of helping our fellow Americans, not pulling the rug out from under them. If you're supporting these cuts, you don't believe in the American people. I yield back.
The question's on agreeing to the amendment offered by Mr. Trone. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. And if the gentleman would like a roll call vote, happy to roll that in. Okay. We'll postpone the recorded vote until later in the markup. Are there other